I still stand by it, man. I stand by the perspective that says that this trade was completely unnecessary, and the Vancouver Canucks put themselves in a worse position by normalizing trades like this one when they weren't really the type of team that should have been able to make those types of trades in the first place. Let's take a step back all the way to 2020, February 17th. And go over a trade that I talked about on the rooftop of Richmond Center. It was a Thursday. I was going to the Richmond Sockeyes Junior B PJHL broadcasting booth, and I was going to play-by-play commentate a game over there. But during the pregame, I was having some salmon sashimi, my salmon avocado roll. It was very good. Thank you very much for asking. During the pregame, I got a notification that I had to leave the mall and step out onto the rooftop to be able to record a video to talk about the Vancouver Canucks traded for Tyler Toffoli. And, ever since then, ever since the playoffs, the bubble, the trade, Tyler Toffoli has been a pretty polarizing name amongst Vancouver Canucks fans and Montreal Canadiens fans, because I'm a Canadiens fan too. They're my second favorite team. So just seeing this player go from team to team to team, it's kind of funny the way everything goes down. But still, Tyler Toffoli was a modern-day LA Kings legend. Not because he had won 2 Stanley Cups with the team. No, he only won 1 Stanley Cup in 2013-14. But during that Stanley Cup performance, he was a part of that 70s line. He became a 30-goal scorer with the LA Kings. He was so lethal, so offensively potent. He wasn't the fastest guy in the world, but he was two-way responsible and good along the boards, and he had a beautiful shooting ability that allowed him to net a whole bunch of goals, plus make some filthy dangles as well. In 2019-20, the LA Kings were not really all too great of a team. There was a conversation or two about this team regressing. You could say they weren't going to make the playoffs, and Tyler Toffoli was in the last year of a contract that would need an extension. He was 28 years old and in the prime of his career. And after he scored what was a hat trick, I believe, outdoors in the Stadium Series or whatever it was against the Colorado Avalanche, he got traded to the Vancouver Canucks, who were lacking a right-handed sniper-type player because Brock Besser was injured at that point in time. This was the trade that we saw that I was kind of freaking out about back then, but I was sort of, oddly hopeful at the same time. In hindsight, I feel a little bit different about it, but this was the trade that follows. Tyler Toffoli gets sent over to Vancouver in exchange for Tim Schaller, who is a cap dump to make the salary work, the signing rights to Tyler Madden. That was a prospect that a lot of Vancouver Canucks fans, myself included, absolutely adored, plus a second-round pick from Vancouver in 2020, and a 2022 fourth-round pick from Vancouver that was conditional, depending on whether or not Tyler Toffoli would re-sign with Vancouver. Now, this isn't really a trade return finalized video because the pick was not sent over, by the way. So, in all technicality, this trade return was finalized back in 2020. But I wanted to revisit everything that happened because, boy, the Vancouver Canucks ultimately got themselves the short end of the stick, I feel, because even though Tyler Toffoli came into Vancouver and he was good, he had 10 points in 10 games played, 6 goals, 4 assists, he scored a boatload of goals for Vancouver with Pettersson, with Miller, and all them. The season got cut short because the world ended up pausing, and we had ourselves an offseason with a whole bunch of conversations saying, hey, Tyler Toffoli's a good player, and he's legitimately talented, and he's in the prime of his career, and he might go out there and ask for something in the $4 or $5 million range, which wouldn't be too bad. He was making 4.6 the previous few years, so why not re-sign this guy to a 4.5 by 3-year contract? He'll stay in Vancouver. Vancouver will give the 4th-round pick in 2022 because that was the condition on that pick. But at the end of the day, the Vancouver Canucks can keep a point-per-game score that they had that actually did have very good chemistry with Pettersson and everything. This is what they need to do, right, Benning? Right? You had an off-season's amount of time worth of a pause from February when the league stopped, or March, or whenever the heck it was, to August when the bubble came out. That's like an off-season's worth of time, and you had that amount of time to figure out what the heck you're going to do with your team. And then Tyler Toffoli goes into the playoffs. He is not as good as he was in the regular season. He only has 4 points in 7 games played, and to be fair, 3 of those points came in 1 game. But the Vancouver Canucks in the real 2020 offseason, after the bubble playoffs, not in the entire span of time that the league was paused up due to the virus, But in the regular offseason, the team had 3 big fish free agents that they needed to re-sign. Tanev, Toffoli, Markstrom, and they signed none of them. All of them, gone, reduced to ashes, spread amongst the winds of free agency to sign with any other team. Tanev and Markey went to Calgary. Tyler Toffoli signed a contract in Montreal that a lot of Canucks fans were like, hey, that's a pretty not bad contract, like 4.25 AAV for 4 years. Like, Vancouver should have been able to get that done, right? And in hindsight, it's like, oh, wow, Jim Benning actually chose to re-sign Jake Virtanen and keep Tyler Toffoli. And then in the media, they asked him, hey, Tyler Toffoli, what happened? And he's like, oh, we ran out of time. We ran out of time to sign this guy. And it's like, bro, you had an entire offseason and a half, 2 off-seasons worth of time to make a decision on what to do and actually get some negotiations done. You could have negotiated with Toffoli in March. But, yeah, they didn't. And at the end of the day, the Vancouver Canucks, who were a bubble team, an overachieving team, a play-in series team that won against Minnesota and then beat a lackadaisical St. Louis Blues team in the first round, almost got carried by Demko, who put up one of the best individual playoff performances we have ever seen in the second round to go to the third round. And the Vancouver Canucks lost out on the signing rights to Tyler Madden, who is a pretty good prospect. I mean, he had 31 points in 48 games played in the AHL as a small forward. I mean, it's a pretty good player if you ask me. Then you have Tim Schaller, who is just really a cap dump. He's not really the main meat and potatoes over there. The second round pick, the LA Kings didn't even use. They sent that over to Detroit. They selected Theodor Niederbach, and I really much like that prospect. So Vancouver, hey, good on fumbling the bag on that one. And then you talk about the 2022 fourth conditional, which is Damon Gardner. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video here. But, like, still, the Vancouver Canucks were not a mainstay, okay, we are a contender status level team. They were on the outside looking in. Sure, they had a roster that assembled on paper was a lot better than they probably were performing in terms of the talent, but as Harman Dale eloquently put it on the radio, the Vancouver Canucks were not a playoff contending team that was making a playoff contending type of trade. You see these trades where you trade for rental players and you give away prospects and stuff. These trades are normally done by mainstay contenders, and Vancouver was just not that. They lucked into a first-round matchup with a team that was not really all too engaged, and then they barely squeaked by in the second round because of goaltending. The team got infinitely worse after you lost out on Tanev and Markstrom and Toffoli, and then you had the next 2 seasons which followed afterwards where the Vancouver Canucks are a bad team. They don't have too many prospects in the system. Tyler Madden and Theodor Niederbach, had they kept those picks and the player, they would have been pretty good prospects in the organization. And you gave them up for what, 10 games of Tyler Toffoli? Now, with all things considered, the Vancouver Canucks did not re-sign Toffoli, which meant that they kept their 4th-round pick in 2022. With it, they selected Damon Gardner, whom, as we talked about in the video highlighting his overall profile, was an absolute high school superstar. 6'4", 201, he's a big dude. He produced like crazy for the Warren High School team in the Minnesota High School League, 83 points in 30 games played. He did not produce well, though, in the USHL. This season, he's going to be going over to the Chilliwack Chiefs in the BCHL, so a lot of the local Vancouver folk, hey, if you're in Chilliwack, go ahead and check out some Chiefs games, see how Damon Gardner is going to be playing. And then the season after that, he's going to be playing in Clarkson University in the NCAA. I think it bears no repeating over here that a guy who is 18 years old playing in junior A hockey in BC probably should be able to light that league on fire if he wants to prove himself as a proper, legitimate NHL prospective talent. So for Gardner, hopefully he goes out there and provides some sort of redemption here for the Vancouver Canucks not re-signing Tyler Toffoli, because at the end of the day, this trade, I mean, in hindsight, it just was so ill-placed, and it was not the proper time to make a move like that. The Vancouver Canucks probably would have beaten the Wild and the Blues even if they didn't have Toffoli, because he only really produced for 1 game, to be fair, in the playoffs. And yeah, I'm still kind of traumatized from talking about this, and I really do think that this type of trade, you know, trading away for older players that either have very short-term deals that you're going to have to shell out money for later on that you wouldn't be able to do so, like Toffoli, or trading for aging veterans with bad contracts like OEL. Benning just kind of got desperate at the end, didn't he? Talk to me in the comments, your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.